This episode was sponsored by Skillshare. Welcome to another episode of The Photo Department. I'm really excited about today's episode because I never really got the whole expired film thing. I thought it was really niche to shoot expired film, especially since it's, not guaranteed you're going to get anything out of it. And a lot of people that shoot expired films spend a lot of money on expired films online on eBay or other websites like that. And they're taking a risk, but oftentimes their risk is rewarded, which is really cool. Like I said, I've never really gotten into it. That is until Fuji started discontinuing films that I really loved shooting, and then shooting those films expired was kind of the only way to do that. So we're going to talk about expired film today. But first, I want to talk a little bit about what I'm drinking. It's hot today in Los Angeles, so I'm drinking iced coffee. I did a little pour over into ice, and it's really, really nice. This coffee I got from my good friend and the co-host of my podcast, The Spooky Park Bench, Mike. He is working in wholesale, I believe, for New Ground Coffee in England. I believe it's in Oxford. I should have done research before I started talking about. This is their Kenyan coffee. It's a honey process coffee, and he sent this to me to try out, and it's really, really good. I've only had it iced so far, but it's really delicious. It's got a nice body to it. You should check out New Ground Coffee. They're on Instagram at New Ground Coffee. And on top of that, make sure you check out my podcast, The Spooky Park Bench. Mike and I just had Kyle McDougall on last week, and we have more guests coming up. If you want to hear more of me talking about things that I care about and ranting and raving and kind of being uncensored, that's the place to do it. So check it out. And thanks, Mike. I love the coffee. Okay, on to the film. So we're going to talk today about Kodak 2, which is a film made by Kodak, was made by Kodak. This was actually their first in their new generation of C41 films. So this is like one of the first C41 films that were made, which is pretty interesting. Really cool. I got this film from my dad. 2 years ago, my great uncle passed away and left my dad all his stuff and his house. And my dad, I don't know, for whatever reason, didn't really go through any of my uncle's stuff for a while until this year. He found a bunch of photography stuff in a cabinet in the garage. I had no idea that my great uncle was into photography, but turns out since high school, he was an avid hobbyist and took tons of photos. I found a ton of slides from when he was a kid. I found contact sheets, negatives. I'm really hoping to scan some of this stuff to show you guys some of it later. It's really interesting. But he found a bunch of film that had never been shot before. So there was a bunch of this Kodak 2, brand new in the box, never been opened. And there's some Kodak Pan X and some mystery film that I've yet to open, but I'm waiting for the opportune time to do that. But I thought it would be cool to take this film that my uncle bought in the 70s and shoot it now. This film expired in 1978, in April 1978. So this is the oldest expired film I've ever had. And my first impressions are there's no way I'm getting an image on this film. It's also ASA 80, which is a very slow film. I'm not super hopeful I'm going to get anything on this film, but I am hopeful that I'll get something. Common wisdom is that if you shoot expired film at a stop for each decade that it's expired. But as I've seen and as I've experienced, that's kind of like a gamble that doesn't really happen for everything. It's not going to work for every film. In my research, I found that certain films, if it's a lower ISO, less sensitive, it'll last a lot longer being expired. Films that are just like faster, higher speed films will degrade quicker. So being ASA 80, I hope that maybe there's something on this. Maybe I can take some photos with this film and I'll be able to experience something of what maybe my uncle would have experienced when he shot this back in the 70s. So that's what I did. So I took a roll of this Kodak Kodacolor 2 with me when I went to Milwaukee last week, and I put it through my black Nikon F2 and my 50mm f1.4 lens just to see if I can get anything. And I processed it. It's been drying. I haven't looked at it as much as possible, but let's see if we got anything. So I want to take a quick second and talk about our sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community full of thousands of classes for creative and curious people like you and me. I know I've already talked about this a couple times, but I just really love the color grading class by Dan Liu. It's just so good, and it's really helped me figure out what I'm looking for and how to achieve exactly what I'm going for when it comes to color grading. The way that she describes the concepts is very clear and concise. All of the examples that she shows are super helpful, and I think I'm pretty happy with where I'm at with color grading now, but I still will go back and revisit just to kind of like sharpen the edge on some of those skills. There's so much more on Skillshare for everyone, not just, like I said, editing video. And for less than $10 a month on an annual plan, you can have access to all of it with Skillshare Premium. If you want to check Skillshare out and see what there is there for you, there's a link in my description, and the first 1,000 people who sign up with that link will get a free membership. Thank you so much to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. So I've got my light box here. I have the negatives, and as you can see probably already from looking, it doesn't look like we got anything, which is, you know, what I expected, but I'm going to take a closer look. I've got my loop here so I can take a look closer. We'll turn this guy on. Okay. Wow. Yep. Just as I suspected. Yeah, there's nothing. There's no latent image. There's no... That's kind of, I mean, I thought that's what was going to happen. I saw here on the first strip that there's kind of like this change in the color. So the backing is green. So the acetate that this is on is green, which is kind of interesting. But there's like this change. There's a darker green in the beginning, and then it turns to a light green, which the rest of it is the same color. And I thought maybe there was something there. There was like a frame or maybe something that was there, but no, nothing. No images. I processed this with Tetanol kit that I mixed recently, so it's fresh. I also processed 2 other rolls of film before it just to make sure that the chemistry is good and that it's not losing any of its potency. And so those 2 rolls came out great and beautiful, so I know it's not the chemistry. That is the risk in shooting expired film, especially shooting a film that's expired by that long. 1978, that's really old film. When I was doing my research on this film, I was looking on eBay to see if there were any rolls of this film for sale, and there are, and they range anywhere from $10 to $15 a roll. Expired around the same time. This roll I found here is $10, expired in 1985, so a year before I was born. I wouldn't recommend buying it. You don't know when this was stored and how. I know that this film from my great uncle was stored in his garage, which is relatively cool and away from sunlight, in a cabinet in a box with other photographic supplies, probably for most of his life because he lived in that house for a very long time. It wasn't frozen, it wasn't refrigerated, but it wasn't stored in unideal circumstances, I would say. Even then, nothing. I'm not saying you shouldn't go out and check out expired film. I am definitely going to try other expired films that are more expired than I'm used to. I currently have some rolls of Fuji Industrial 400 that expired in 2019 that I'm still shooting. That looks great, but that's only a couple of years. I also have some Fuji Natura 1600 that expired in 2017. That film's obviously going to be fine. I have shot Kodak Gold that expired in the early 2000s. That turned out okay. So it just kind of depends on what you're trying to do and if you're trying to get a specific effect or if you're okay with stuff not coming out or coming out super weird. Definitely not for every project. This was just to kind of see what would happen. And I am sad that nothing came of it. I didn't get any images, but it was really fun to kind of take some film that was purchased by a family member a long time before I was born. It's kind of nice to be able to kind of share that with them, even after their passing. So I don't regret it. This was fun. And I still have some rolls of Kodacolor 2 left. I also have some rolls of that Pan X. I believe it's Pan X. It's actually Plus X Pan. Let's see, 125 ASA film. Also from the same batch that I'm assuming he bought in 1977 or 78. Expires in 78. So he probably bought it a couple years before that. So I did shoot a roll of the Plus X Pan when I was in Milwaukee as well. It's ASA 125, but I did shoot it at 100. So I'm actually really interested to see how this will come out. I heard through my research and from people I know who shoot expired film that black and white film, especially slower films, will degrade a much slower. So it's possible that I might get something on this roll, and I'm super excited for that. So I'll do that video sometime soon once I get this processed. But I might just shoot through these other rolls of Kodacolor. Maybe this one was a fluke. Maybe this one was a dud. Maybe there's something maybe there's use out of these yet. So we'll see. Thank you guys again for watching. If you want to follow the channel on Instagram, we have an account just at the photo department. If you want to follow my personal work and professional work, my Instagram is at Christopher Michael Sturm. Make sure you check out the Spooky Park Bench podcast. We got our first bad review the other day. They said that the audio sucked, and we agree it could be better. So our next episodes will be much better audio quality. We're learning. I've never done a podcast before, so I have no idea what I'm doing. But come check out the podcast. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of me being uncensored and unhinged. Mike is also that, but Scottish. I'll leave a link in the description to the podcast. You can check it out. It's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. I'm hungry, so I'm going to go eat something. Yeah, I'll see you guys later. I love you. Bye.